So with that, I will turn it over to Robin, and she can introduce herself and the other panelists.
All right, I'll go ahead and introduce myself, and then I'll just ask each of you to say a few words about yourselves. I'm Robin Zavad. I am the editor-in-chief of Currents in Pharmacy Teaching and Learning. I am a professor of pharmaceutical sciences at Midwestern University, Chicago College of Pharmacy, and I've been here for 25 years. The RX Writing Challenge has been a boon to me personally, as it really has started habits for me in recognizing that you don't have to necessarily set aside days or weeks or months at a time, that you can set aside 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and check one more thing off the to-do list. So I am very eager to host this particular webinar. With that, I will move on to introduction of Dr. Chen.
So I'm Alita Chen. I'm from Cedarville University, but I serve as an associate editor at RSAP. And so I'm excited. I've participated in this challenge for a few years, and it's always a nice kickstart to get me excited and enthusiastic and a little bit more emotionally happy about writing. So I'm excited to be here today.
And Dr. Schlesselman?
Morning. So I'm Lauren Schlesselman from the University of Connecticut, but I'm also associate editor for AJPE. Excited about this particular writing challenge because we're kind of doing a beta test here at UConn with an interdisciplinary. So we've reached out to the other health disciplines and gotten them involved. So far, so good.
And Dr. DeSalle.
Hi, I'm Shane DeSalle, Editor-in-Chief of RSAP, Research in Social Administrative Pharmacy. I'm a full professor in Social and Behavioral Pharmacy at Touro University, California in Vallejo. And like Robin and the other panelists, I've been really enjoying all of the writing challenges, and I've been especially looking forward to this one because I'm an emotional guy, and I have a lot of emotions, mostly positive, when writing and when completing writing. So I'm anxious to share that, and I have been really excited in the past few challenges, hearing from others about the sorts of things that they experience, and it actually helps internalize things for me and propel me forward.
All right. So we're going to be looking at hoping that participants will achieve maybe at least one, maybe all of the objectives that you can see on the screen. Key habits involved in successful writing, articulating the importance of incorporating emotions, and then identifying a skill related to the emotions, habits of writing that you would like to expand on. Because I think that as we talk about things, there may be things that you're just like, oh, I never thought of it that way, or I never really acknowledged that. And so areas for explanation or exploration going forward would be great, right? All right, Spencer, next slide. Here we are. So in the chat room, if you would, again, selecting all panelists and attendees, maybe you could share what is the first emotion that jumps into your head when you think about writing. And we're not talking about a paragraph, we're talking about one or two words. What is that first emotion? And I would encourage the panelists to participate if they so choose. What are some of those emotions? Dread. Oh, wow. Dread. Excitement, joy, and resistance. Oh, look at that. So there's and or, right? So you have both positives and negatives. Comfortable. Oh, Dr. Peters. Fear, stress. So we're seeing some negativity here. Oh, anxiety, anticipation. Writing and doing other things. There's that tug of war that we spend. Oh boy, here we go again. All right. So a couple of a variety of emotions, and that there's no one right or wrong emotion by any means, right? And I think what we're going to find as we talk today is that writing can elicit a series of emotions over the course of the writing project. At the beginning, maybe a little bit different than at the end, and that great big relief, woohoo, when we hit submit. And then it goes into that black box of publication that we all are responsible for on this end of the panel. All right, so on the screen, now this is gonna be a trick because I have a whole bunch of things on my screen. I can't see what I'm supposed to see. Here we go. Still threaded through contemporary psychology are assumptions about an intellect unaffected by emotion or about emotion as complex disturbance, an interruption or defect in otherwise lawful goal-directed mental processes. It is no wonder that an anxiety, apprehension, and blocking immediately comes to mind when writing specialists think of emotion. And this is from Bland in The Psychology of Writing. So sometimes we think about writing emotions as a bit of a nuisance, like guilt or frustration or dread. You know, I love that. Oh, Lauren, that was good. Dread. So there can be a lot of mixed emotions, and some of them can propel us, and some of them can interfere with getting off the ground or continuing or finishing any part of that, the writing process. Sometimes, there we go. Thank you, Spencer. See, Spencer and I work together, but I don't know what the slides look like. Silly Spencer, silly Robin. Writing involves a constructive interplay between cognition and emotion. So you know you gotta get stuff done, right? But you don't want to do it. Or you can't figure out how to set aside the time. Or there's pressure, publish or perish. That's terrible, right? That is just terrible. Or publishing something that you're not really convinced is what you want to be doing, or maybe you're even bored by it. Ooh, if you're bored, can you imagine what the reader's going to be? That's kind of crazy. All right, let's see what the next slide looks like, because I don't know. Here we go. Oh, before we ask this question, let me ask you to think about the fact that you may read things in the literature where you say, this is just matter of fact, there's no emotion here, it's just the facts, Jack, and you may say, well, that writer didn't experience any emotions. You don't know that. What you may not realize is that maybe the emotions had to be held in check in order to get all the facts out, right? Or that they're worried about stuff, but they're holding it in a controlled way such that you can't tell about their uncertainty or their discomfort in their writing. It's just the facts, right? So we think about mixed emotions. Sword in her chapters talks about mixed emotions, and that both and an either or can happen. So let's take a look at question number 2 here, and we'll continue on a little bit of dialogue. When you hear colleagues talking about writing, what do you hear them say? And I'm going to see if I can figure out how to get back to the chat window so I can see it. There we go. Not getting enough done. Oh, some people are excited. There's uncertainty. What else do we see here? Panic, deadlines. Yes, deadlines are tough. Time, uncertainty. Yeah, this time business keeps coming up, right? Because people either have deadlines that are set for them, or there's deadlines that they have themselves and they don't want to let themselves, or just let themselves down, whatever. Ooh, I wasn't trained for this. Yeah. There's a lot of us that are doing things that we were not trained to do. That's for sure. Ooh, Dr. Peters, lack of first-person voice is objective or unbiased. All right, so some things to think about there. I would say that there was definitely some overlap between what you're hearing your colleagues say and what you yourself are thinking as it relates to writing. And this is, some of that emotional common ground that we have with one another, for sure. recognizing that you'll see here excitement when published. So Leah is talking about that perhaps there's a change over time, right? That, maybe getting that initial energy barrier off the ground. Bob's talking about procrastination. I'll get to this at some point. But the emotions change over time, and Leah's got that excitement when published. Julaine talks about being refreshed when collaborations go well. And that is refreshing, and it's reinvigorating, and that can drive a lot of energy and get you really motivated. But on the flip side, when collaborations don't go well, right? Again, we just sort of a little bit of a downer. You're just like, wow, I would have expected more or whatever. All right. So one thing that I haven't seen, but I think resonates with me sometimes, is the concept of frustration. So some people are talking about stress, and some people are talking about sort of some relatively negative emotions around writing. But sometimes frustration can actually, there's one from Christine, thanks. You can get stuck in frustration because it's sort of like it is outside right now. You spin your wheels, right? You're in the snow and you can't quite get a little bit of traction, and that frustration can really bog you down. So some things that we want to think about is, how do we challenge ourselves to get these negative emotions turned into energy for more positivity, or more, you got it types of types of mentality, right? All right, Spencer, what do we got? Risk and resilience. All right, so this is going to be the beginning of some questions that we're going to be asking panelists. And right at the moment, I need to find my panelists. You can all see me. I can't see panelists. Oh, well, okay. So we're going to start off with a question here for each of our panelists that has to do with your experience with the highs and lows of the different range of emotions while you're writing. I'm going to start off with Alita while I try to figure out how to find my people again. So Alita, if you could share a little bit about that.
Well, as I was thinking through some of the questions for today and managing kind of the highs and lows, I think what struck me, and I was looking at the book last night, I'm very much a pharmacist. So I'm a checklist, productivity, accomplishment person. And I think that is my greatest source of frustration and pleasure at the same time with writing. And so managing that well really helps me move from the frustration to the happy emotions of writing. So, in the book, she challenges to really shift our focus and not just be about getting that full paper done today, or that section of the paper, or that specific goal. And as a pharmacist, I want to create SMART goals and check them off and get them done. But when I focus on, okay, was I at least moving forward? Did I have time to think about it? My writing is better, my emotions are better, and really kind of taking the pharmacist hat and putting it off and really trying to think through how I write well and how I can find pleasure in doing it. So that's kind of some things I was thinking through.
Nice, I like that. I like that ownership of, I'm a pharmacist, but I got to get rid of it. That was nice. All right, Lauren, tell me a little bit about your range of emotions as you are writing.
So for me, I think the range actually starts at the beginning of a research project idea. Some of the reading that I've been doing this week, one of the lines that I saw was that research is nerdy fun, but writing is hard. And for me, like when you come up with an idea for a research project, I am like a little kid in a candy shop, like this is fun, we're gonna have a great time at this. But once I get the data and start playing with it, it starts to, wane a little bit. Although, as you like play with the data, you go, ooh, that's a cool result right there. But then when I got to put fingers to keyboard and actually type, that's where my dread hits. Because I'm just like, oh, I got to really get this done now. And that for me is the harder part, is getting through the actual fingers on the keyboard, writing something that I like.
Yeah, that writing something that you like and that resonates with you, and really does justice to the excitement that you had when you started, right? That is so challenging because you were so excited and now you're dreadful. Oh.
Yep.
All right, Shane, what do you know? Oh, I shouldn't have asked that. We can't hear you, Shane.
I consider writing, getting into the writing phase, not just when I have my fingers on the keyboard, but when I am in the process of tackling a writing endeavor. And so even thinking about what I'm writing about next and so forth, even while I'm eating lunch or taking a break and doing something else. And I experience a very significant high when I think of a new angle or a different way of putting something than I was thinking of before, or to add, say, something that would be creative or new, say, in the discussion section of whatever I was writing. And and when I see myself type it out, and it still looks good. It doesn't always do, but when it looks good, I get a sense of excitement and pride that, we all think of. I mean, all of us do various types of writing, but primarily we're talking about writing the results of research into a manuscript, and we think of that as sometimes bland, if you will, introduction, methods, results, discussion. But I like to think, the joy I get is from thinking of it as more than that. And so when I think of a different way of putting something, even when I had typed something initially and I go back and I say, you know what, I could change the way that I phrase these last 2 or 3 paragraphs that I wrote. And then I see the change as a result of what I was thinking while I was eating lunch, or even while I was watching a TV show or whatever. I get really excited about it. So I think about writing not just when I have my fingers on the keyboard, but the whole process that is underway while I'm writing, which includes breaks, thinking, dreaming, you name it.
Are you participating or are you just hanging out?
Sorry, was that to me?
No, that was to Spencer.
Oh, Spencer.
But I can ask you the same question. Are you just hanging out or are you participating?
I'm hanging out.
Oh, hanging out. Got it. Kristen, how about you?
I was going to hang out unless you need me to say something.
Can you just start off with how you channel negative emotions into positive emotions?
Yeah. How I personally do that?
Yes, you personally.
Yeah. I don't let myself stay in a negative place very long. And this happened to me just a couple days ago. I was writing on something and it didn't feel like it was going well. It didn't feel like the words were coming out. It didn't feel like I was creating the volume I was supposed to. It was just not right. And I don't let myself stay in that space. I try and be really sensitive to when I start going over into that negative, like it's not good enough, it's not enough, all that kind of stuff. Catch it and turn it around. Like, what is good about this? Yes, I'm struggling, but I'm going to get to the answer. I'm going to get to something positive. And I constantly ask myself, what is good about this? This particular situation? Well, I'm really enjoying my co-authors. We're having a hard time with some referencing right now, but there are other good parts of this, and try and bring some focus to that.
And I think that speaks to that Fredrickson quote, Kristen, the idea of when you get stuck in that negative space, it actually inhibits you from and hurts your resilience. And when you do change to focus on the positive, you can see those benefits and the good pieces, and you can build on your skills. So 2 cents, I'm done.
I like how Kristen mentions co-authors, because a lot of times I find that helps me pull out of any negative views I might have, and keep me moving forward rather than pushing it off and doing all the other things rather than writing. So I know that co-authors a lot of times will keep me excited about a project. And even if I am the only person on, a writing piece, so as an AJPE associate editor, we all have to write a certain number of viewpoints a year. And typically you're the only person on it, but I still will reach out to the other associate editors and go, throw topics at me. And just from them spitting out topics, I may not pick any of their topics. And just the fact that I reached out to somebody made me feel a little more positive about the idea of writing.
Well, and through a lot of this challenge, we've been talking about the benefit of community in writing with the Twitter feed, with writing groups. And, we're really seeing how when we do it together, whether it's just sitting by each other with some coffee or tea, or actually writing as a group, it's amazing to see the possibilities and the positive emotions that coming from that. I know my writing groups are some of the highlights of my day.
I would say for me, I want to tag on to something that Kristen said. When you're having a whole series of negative emotions about your writing, I very quickly recognize that can lead into thought distortion, like, oh, I can't do this. Oh my God, I've gotten myself in over my head. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I give myself an oh well day. Oh well. Oh well. And move on. Because oh well means you recognize you're not at your optimal, and you might as well just go off and do something else. Just, oh well, okay, it's all right, right? You give yourself permission to just not be in the moment, which is good. I like that. So
We've been talking about co-authors, and I wanted to say that writing with others makes me appreciate both the fact that there are people who are very much like me, and there are people who are very much different than me. And I've actually appreciate both of them. It's nice to find people who are very much like you in emotion, their level of desire for protectivity, they're being driven and so forth. And it's also enlightening to see people work very differently from you both. So I actually come to appreciate both the people that they both give me energy. The people that are very much like me and the people that are very much different than me both give me energy.
do you have any idea whether or not the negativity that we experience, do you think that's more internally driven or externally driven? Where does it come from? And does it depend on what it is that you're writing? Where does it come from? Inside, or is it outside and then you internalize it?
Well, I think it would be both. I think it depends on where you are in your career and what you're writing for and so forth. I mean, obviously, the people who are under the gun to publish a certain number of papers, or even publish in a certain caliber of journal by a certain time, or by promotion, or by end of year, or whatever that might be. I mean, that's external, and I think it's difficult not to internalize that, even though the pressure comes from external. I've been in the fortunate spot of not having to have that sort of pressure in quite a long time. So all of mine comes from within. But yet, as you look at Sword's book, about resilience and so forth, even the pressure that I internalize, I actually channel that into something really positive. And it's funny because in life, and we're always told to reward yourself and not punish yourself too much when you accomplish things. And I'm actually very poor about that. I'm really good about just punishing myself. but oddly enough, except when it comes to writing, I reward myself very well for writing, and I've just made that into a very positive experience.
I would agree with Shane, but I also feel a lot internally. I mean, probably it started externally in some ways, but there's a lot of internal. Someone mentioned I wasn't trained for this. If you think about, graduate school, you're probably writing the biggest writing project of your life, if not one of the biggest. And yet how much time is really focused on the be a good writer. Never mind being a good academic writer. So yeah, I think there's a lot of us who come at it from, I really wasn't trained to do all this academic writing. And then we bring in our own sense of imposter syndrome, wherever it comes from in you. And I think that just adds on, and like, wow, Spencer, I think he's just naturally good at this. Whereas, I'm faking it all the way. And so, and like, you just carry that around with you, that, like, wow, it must come naturally to them.
Well, and you even see in the book, I love that she talked about in the Risk and Resilience chapter to celebrate failure. And I had a conversation with some of my colleagues recently about, we should celebrate failure more often, because that's where I've learned the most in my writing. I get those reviews back, and like in her book, you want to disagree with all of them and write a letter back about how they're wrong. But then if you take some time to think about it, you see the beauty in it. And my greatest failures as a writer have made me a better writer. And so I encourage my students and people I work with to celebrate those failures, because we learn and grow from them. And that, changing that attitude has helped my internal discussion of the negativity with writing to change to more positivity.
It's great. I'm loving this. As we're thinking about these emotions, I think sometimes we wonder if we're not willing to take a risk because we're already emotionally, invested in, maybe positively, maybe negatively, but taking a risk can add yet additional anxiety to the whole process. Have any of you taken a risk when you've taken on a writing assignment? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about that? And what did that anxiety, that risk taking do for your emotional state in general?
I guess a risk for me was, without having really had much experience in writing large grants, like R01 type grants, because I've never been in that sort of situation. And then in a past experience, when I was dean at California North State, took the helm of one of the PIs and lead authors on a grant that was going to the National Cancer Institute, in combination with UC Davis Cancer Center. And having never even been responsible for writing a smaller grant, R15 or what have you, that was the biggest risk. And I felt, and actually some of the people with whom I was writing had much more experience than I did in grant writing. They may not have published as much as I have or edited as many things as I have. But these are people that had already secured the type of money that I had never secured before. So I felt very exposed at the time, and was very nervous, not for the final product that I would put to the National Cancer Institute, but actually nervous about what I would present to some of my colleagues. So I had already acquired multi-million dollars of grants before, because these were people at the high-powered UC Davis and whatnot, and so it's a high-powered institution that was just a few miles down the road from mine, but a very different type of place than I'd ever worked. So that made me nervous, but they were really good about it, and they were great colleagues, and they pointed out the things that I did well, and did an extraordinary job of making me feel good about the things that needed to be improved as well.
I'd agree with Shane on the feeling exposed. I mean, it's usually when you're trying some new research method or some, statistical analysis. I'm not Dr. Michael Peters. So, there are times where I'm in over my head. And, you're like, okay, I need to admit that to somebody and get a collaborator in on a project. And that you just feel completely exposed. And am I going to totally screw this up? And in the end, there's some of the publications that people comment to me about the most that you're like, wow, really? They're like, oh, that was really impactful. Or the other times that I feel exposed is on some of these viewpoints. For me, they're very emotional. I try to hit the softer side of things. And as a pharmacist, you don't put yourself out there emotionally much. And so to do so in print where lots of people are going to see it is it's like standing there, naked in front of people. But I get such positive feedback from people about them that thank you, someone needed to say this, that I'm like, okay, then it's worth my having to stand there naked.
And maybe this is just relating to me as a pharmacist, but I feel like evidence-based is what I was trained to do. And so everything, and Robin will laugh at me because she knows I like to have citations for everything when I write. So when I'm forced into that writing of emotions or not opinion, but kind of that viewpoint or a blog or something like that, that really steps out of my comfort zone. And for me, that takes a lot of, and I see someone talking about vulnerability and courage. That takes a lot of courage for me to put my stake in an opinion or a direction I feel we need to head as an academy without evidence to back it up. I didn't get a p-value or, a confidence interval or whatever, or it wasn't in the textbook. And so I don't know if other people feel that same way, but for me, the non-clinical, the non-evidence-based writing is the hardest. And that's something I have to work to constantly stretch myself in that area.
Let's talk a little bit more about this vulnerability, because this is very, very, very true. And that vulnerability can start at, I don't know how to ask a research question. And who do I go to within my institution or outside of the institution? I don't really know what I'm doing. I wasn't trained to do this, but yet this is an expectation. And that vulnerability is very real. But you can't shove these things under the rug. As a therapist long ago told me, you shove things under the rug, they seep out in all kinds of places that you don't want them to. And including in reviewer number 2's comments, right? You haven't thought about something, or you aren't thinking about design, or whatever the case might be. But that vulnerability that feeling of vulnerability can start very early. And if you don't find a collaborator or a mentor, that vulnerability can really hijack your productivity. Writing is down the line, right? Writing, you've done some stuff, but I would say that vulnerability can occur very early. And it's people like us, editors, who have the ability you can reach out to us, right? And start that conversation, and such that you feel less vulnerable. I have this idea, what do you think? I haven't done anything yet. There are people within your own institutions that can help with that vulnerability piece. And it like I said, it's not just on the writing end of a research project, right? I mean, it's writing that first IRB. There you're doing some really important, critical, foundational writing, right? What am I setting myself up to do? Am I evaluating things the way that I should? Our MM team, Dr. Harp and good old Mike Peters, will make sure that you're doing the right design for what you're trying to find out. It is so hard. even in the writing process, reviewers don't like what you're doing because you were vulnerable at the beginning and you didn't get yourself some help, right? So really important to think about acknowledging that, owning that, right? You can tell, big passion point for me here. Because there are people out there that can help you. We can help you, right? And in the writing process, being vulnerable in terms of allowing your own peers to do an internal peer review before things get submitted. Wow, how powerful is that? Reading your manuscript to yourself in the mirror, right? You can catch all kinds of grammatical errors doing that, right? All kinds of things. So I think this is really real, and people don't like to talk about it because it doesn't feel good, right? Shane, what would you like to tell us about vulnerability and how you manage that?
Well, I feel vulnerable when I'm doing something different. As far as writing manuscripts based upon evidence I've collected in a research project I've done, I don't really feel vulnerable. I don't. So I do feel vulnerable on other occasions. For example, in the last year or two, as editor for RSAP, we've put out a couple of position papers about what we are looking for, and some things that we're advising authors not to do, the types of papers we prioritize, and even corroborating a recent paper that we had from a statistician about where the journal is going to head in terms of how we view statistics and how people should write about statistics. And I felt very vulnerable about that because I'm thinking, this is whatever I put out there is going to be seen immediately by everyone. And when you're writing about the research that you've done, the first people that are going to see it are an editor and 2 or 3 peer reviewers. That's not that many people. That's why I don't really feel that vulnerable. But something that I'm about to put out is going to be seen by dozens, hundreds, thousands of people. And if I make a mistake in terms of what I'm trying to say and I don't express myself very clearly, it could end up having entirely the opposite effect of what I intended in terms of putting it out there for journal policy and journal direction. And that's why it's great. That's why I seek comfort in others, and that's why I seek comfort in my associate editors and sometimes editorial board. Sometimes we put some very important things out even on our social media pages. And that's writing. So sometimes I'll write a couple of paragraphs that's going to go on our Facebook page, or 100 whatever characters that go on our Twitter page. And I feel very vulnerable because as soon as you put that out, it's there. You don't have 2 or 3 people to tell you, well, this could be a little bit better. Why don't you improve this? It's out there. And so I make sure before I put it out there that I have bounced it off other people, like associate editors and board members, again, who provide a considerable amount of support. So support can come from a lot of different people. It could come from professional colleagues. It could come from people who are not necessarily well-versed in writing, but who are just supportive of you as a person. So I think it's important to get all different types of support to try to minimize that vulnerability, because if, again, as we've said, and as mentioned in that book, and as people who are participating on this chat have said, vulnerability can stifle productivity and make one feel worse about oneself than before you even put the first word on the page.
A few approaches that I've used to get past that sense of vulnerability. So as a brand new faculty member, one of the things the dean recommended was that everyone get a research mentor. So I found the most prolific, researcher writer I could in the department. We didn't do any of the same research, but he was supportive of me. First he put me on one of his projects just so I could get used to the idea of writing, doing academic type papers. And then as I started actually coming up with ideas, they were very vague ideas. And I just go to him, well, kind of thinking this kind of thing. And he could help me, pare it down to a true question and, define, okay, well, this could be the research methods that you use, or this, which way are you thinking, Laura, and help you work through it. And so they're more of, they're a mentor, but they're a cheerleader. They're a sounding board. They are all those types of things. Even at this point in my career, we still reach out to each other with ideas and thoughts and are supportive of each other. Now we've reached more just the cheerleader stage for most things. I know of some colleagues who do writing groups who get together every 3-4 weeks. It's a standing meeting, every Friday, and they just sit down and write together. And not necessarily, they're not writing the same paper, they are just doing their own, and then they'll share it across the table and go, could you, give me some formative feedback on this and help me out. So I think that's some of the courage, is accepting somebody into, knowing you're vulnerable.
All right, Alita?
I would agree with what everyone said so far. I also, I have a close friend who also I collaborate with a lot, but that there's a trusted relationship there that I know that she will be incredibly blunt and honest with me and tell me this is terrible. And everyone needs a friend like that who will tell you your ideas are terrible and you need to change. And I think that's been really good for me to kind of face the vulnerability with her, because it's a safe space already. And, just kind of the idea that developing those groups, whether it's with a trusted mentor or it's a friend or somebody like that, someone that you're okay with just being honest with you that, you really need to rethink this, or this is a great direction, but did you consider this? I mean, forming those relationships really help you move past the vulnerable to committing to move forward with a project in a good way that's better than your original idea. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. So we've explored a little bit about vulnerability and some negative emotions. Maybe we could talk about other types of mental hurdles. And sometimes this can be associated with time management, right? So here's a whole series of mental hurdles that Kristen, Kyle Wilby, and I identified in a commentary that, if Kristen's hit submit, we'll publish relatively soon. And maybe she has, and I just missed it in my email box. Procrastination, perfectionism, some of those we've seen on chat, various distractions. There's that whole negative thought distortion on self-doubt. Lauren, are any of these mental hurdles that you navigate? And if so, can you share with us how you do that and to bring more positivity to your writing?
I think fear of failure is always one. I think it's always in the back of our minds, no matter what stage we're at. They may be different, fears of failure or present themselves in different ways. But I think that's one, because I think we are perfectionists. As a pharmacist, you want to do it right and always do it right. There's a patient's life on the line. And I think it is just part of our personality type. So the perfectionist is definitely in there. And I'm great at procrastinating on it, because I will find other busy work that needs to get done. Like, gee, my email looks really important right now. And for me, it's doing things like these writing challenges, or somebody keeping me accountable, which is why I like the whole collaborators. Is there's other people keeping me accountable, or I just feel bad, like, oh, geez, I'm letting Robin down here. And that will make, you're fine, Robin. That will make me step up and get past it, is knowing that there are other people who I respect who I don't want to let down.
I think we have to keep in mind, people have been talking about vulnerability, courage, ego. You know, we're talking about seeking others out. We also have to remember that people are seeking us out. And I think, you know, the old cliche or idiom, you know, do unto others as you'd have done unto you. I think we need to remember that. I think we do need to drop our own egos at the door, not only because most of us, we panelists here, or for lack of a better term, senior writers, if you will, we've been around, we've written our fair share of things, we edit things, and so people are often turning to us. And so the things that we're advising to people today, we have to keep in mind, and we have to mentor other mentors, to drop that ego at the door, to have them expose their own vulnerability. Just like we talk about when we're teaching, we have to create a positive rapport and an environment where students don't hesitate to ask questions, where students don't hesitate to proffer something that might sound ridiculous to the rest of their classmates. Well, we have to do the same thing for our colleagues. We have to establish an environment of collegiality. We have to establish an environment of people not hesitating at all to turn to us, to ask us questions, that they would never fear any sort of repercussions or embarrassment from seeking us out. And I think we have to do that. We have to set an example for others, and so that they may then set example for others, because I think it's all infectious and contagious.
And, you know, I think along with this, figuring out kind of how all four of these habits mesh together. So I see a lot of these mental hurdles, and a lot of them relate to the other habits sort outlines. So they relate to, you know, the behavioral or the artisanal or social habits. And for me, when I kind of balance all of those things, a lot of these mental hurdles become much easier to overcome. So whether it's having that nice, for me, coffee, that nice cup of coffee, and, you know, putting those things in place to, you know, providing that start, or having a colleague come and join me so I can brainstorm because I just can't get past this mental hurdle. Whatever it is, thinking about how all four of those factors come into play, and balancing them really helps me move past these mental hurdles and be more productive in my writing. And again, understanding that I definitely have so much room to learn and grow. I find that every day I'm learning from my colleagues on how to be more creative, or think outside the box, or just do things a little bit differently, or write a little bit better. Looking up something on Grammarly, whatever it may be. So kind of not getting into that mindset that I've got it all together and that I have answers, but let's explore answers together. And that's really good pharmacist mindset, right? Let me go look it up. It's the same type of thing. Let's use our support and our resources to get through these mental hurdles.
One last thing I'd like to explore with the panel, and then we could certainly look to see if we've got questions that we need to address in chat. Alita brought up this business about accountability. And, you know, if you look at Weight Watchers and a number of other weight loss programs, part of the success of those programs, is accountability. And it's you showing that you are accountable to other people, right? So this discussion about working in a group, even if you're not writing on the same paper, I think is, it lends itself to, again, this accountability. It's setting aside time. It's being responsible to others, you know, to show up and be part of that writing group. Maybe the panelists could share their piece of advice to individuals, doesn't matter how seasoned they are, about how best to navigate this piece of accountability. Uh-oh, crickets.
So I feel like being flexible to change how you need to be accountable at different phases has been a good thing for me. So I used to be just really there was a phase in my life where it was no problem. I could schedule time and there were no interruptions. I'm not in a season of life with that. So it's easy to have the tyranny of the urgent. So something needs to be done for a class or a student or assessment or something, and that takes precedence. So accountability new for me is having writing teams. And like I mentioned in the chat, we schedule out meetings. And I know that by the time the meeting comes, I've got to get my work done. And that accountability piece has been really helpful. Or having writing groups even within my institution, and we're all setting aside time to write together. Seasons when we've done that during the RX Writing Challenge or at other times have also really fueled that accountability. Well, how's your writing going? So those are some things that I found to be helpful.
Anybody else want to chime in on this?
So I'm, as Shane said, we're getting senior here. In the past, there were so many people who helped keep me accountable, you know, whether it was the setting up meetings to keep us on projects or the how's the writing going, you know, just the check-ins. Now I am in my first semester of empty nesting and realizing that my role is changing a bit. And so I'm trying to do the same for others more. And that was why, although I've done the writing challenge before, because we did not have anyone at UConn who was taking the contact lead, I offered to do it even though I'm not in the School of Pharmacy anymore, because I thought it was a great opportunity for me to step up and keep others accountable. You know, and as I mentioned, we're doing an interdisciplinary writing challenge. And so I've kind of taken on the role of, you know, it's similar to Kristen's daily emails. I do out a daily email that goes out to everyone in our writing group. And then in the evenings, I email them again and check and say, hey, how was today's writing? You know, how did it go for you? And mornings, I'm hosting a writing cafe for 2 hours. It's just a quiet space in our building where you can come if you want to, come for any part of it you want to, and write there. So instead of being the one who others come to and keep accountable, I'm trying to assist others more. Although it's reciprocal, I'm getting just as much out of it as they are. So.
All right, at this point, a couple of things that I'd like to make sure that we sort of wrap up and make sure you're paying attention to what's going on in the chat window. Kristen has asked for some action steps. So what kind of action steps are you interested in starting to put into place? Maybe they will become habit over time, right? There are additional webinars. Kristen can probably speak to that. And then we certainly have an opportunity to answer questions that you might have from the presentation or related to writing. We have about a little less than 10 minutes. Lita and I have a writing group thing to do after this. Just want to remind you that this Swords book really encompasses a lot of different aspects of the writing journey, whether it is behavior, artisanal, social, or the emotional aspects of writing. It isn't just about getting the grammar right. It's really being present, right, while you are writing and understanding who you are. What are your strengths? Where are your areas of improvement? How do you find the people to make your writing whole, right? How do you get, how do you have the courage to be vulnerable, right? How do you have the courage to get set that time aside and then, and give yourself that, oh, well, moment if you have to, right? So there's just so much about writing that we don't talk about because it's all about, you know, did I publish or didn't I? But it's more than that. And there are people around you that want to help you navigate those pieces. And we are some of those people. So with that, Kristen, is there stuff that you'd like to remind our participants about? And then if you have questions, if you would put those in the chat window and we'd be happy to answer those.
No, we've got the link to the webinars. I'm happy to announce that we're going to also have an Eastern time zone friendly webinar. I just need to get the information out to everyone. It'll be on November 7th at 8 a.m. British Standard Time. So that's going to be added. I'm excited about that. And of course, we've got the Twitter takeovers happening and activity out on the hashtag RX Writing Challenge. So check those out too.
All right. For those of you who have been paying attention to chat, do we have questions that we still need to address? I haven't seen any. Are there topics that you'd like for us to chat about, since we're all right here and we've got a few more minutes to share with you? It's 11:01. When did it get to be 11:01? Oh, it is 11:01. We're at the top of the hour. Apparently I need a battery in my clock. Alrighty then, here we go. Thank you so very, very much for spending an hour with us. We hope that your RX Writing Challenge is productive and that you've learned just a little smidge about the emotional piece of writing. Have a great day. Have a great week. And if you're in the snow, be careful.
And thanks to all of our panelists.
Yes, thanks to all of our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.